Now, a detailed essay outline helps you organize your thoughts and prevents writer's block. And outlining an essay is a 4-step process. And let's get right to it. Step 1. State your thesis, which is your main point. If you don't have a clear idea of your thesis, which is your main point, it will be very hard for you to create a detailed outline. A thesis is your main point, and it is a simple sentence. It consists of a subject, a verb, and usually an object. For example, I love apples. Let's suppose that the thesis for which we want to outline our essay is, are elections important and why? And let's decide that elections are in fact important because they have consequences. So our main point is that elections are important because they have consequences. There you go. Now, step 2, identify your main sections. In other words, identify your supporting points. Now, essays consist of parts or sections. In order to know our main sections, we need to come up with several supporting ideas for our main point. Now let's do it. We're going to use the power of 3. Why? Because 3 is really the perfect number of supporting ideas. 1 is not enough because you don't have the separation. You don't have sections then. If you have only one section, you don't have sections. Okay? So 2 is better, but it's not quite there, and 4 or more is usually too many. We don't need 4. We need 3. 3 is the perfect number. So 3 main ideas that are relevant to any country, because we're talking about the elections, right? 3 main ideas that are relevant to any country are political, which pertain to the government, social, which pertain to the people, and economic, which pertain to money. So let's write out a complete thesis statement. Elections are important because they have political, social, and economic consequences. Okay, perfect. Now this is a complete thesis statement. And now we actually have our main structure outline. We have our main structure, which means we have 3 main sections. Okay, we know our main point is that elections are important, and we're going to have 3 sections. The first one devoted to political consequences, the second to social consequences, and the third to economic consequences. Okay, and this is the first level of our outline hierarchy. It's like the bird's eye view of our essay. Okay, but this is a great place to start. This is our foundation. All right. Step 3 is divide each main section into subsections, and this will deepen the structure of our outline. So section 1, political consequences. Now we can use the power of 3 here again, but in terms of politics, it kind of makes sense to have 2 sections. Why? Because they could be about domestic policy and foreign policy. That's just logical. And if you're not sure how to divide any of your topics, just Google it. Just go on Google, look it up, and see what elements it consists of. Now, politics for any country consists generally of 2 things, the inner and the outer, the domestic policy and the foreign policy, and we'll stick to that. Section 2, social consequences. This one is about people, right? So what are the 3 main things about any society? What are the 3 things that are most important for people? Well, number 1 is housing, number 2 is healthcare, and number 3 is education. What are the 3 essential things to anybody in any society? Housing, healthcare, and education. As you can see, we're using the power of 3. Now, section 3, economic consequences. What are 2 or 3 main aspects of any economy? Now, they are taxes, they are employment or unemployment, and they are the gross domestic product, which is the GDP. So now we have our supporting points, which are our subsections. Step 4, create a bulleted list based on the resulting structure. This is our resulting structure, okay? And you can do this in any kind of a mind mapping software. You can use it just on a piece of paper. You can even do this. You can do this anywhere in your Google Docs document. At this point, you have this structure in your mind, hopefully somewhere outside your mind, somewhere in some sort of a document. Elections are important for these 3 reasons, politically, socially, and economically. And we have the supporting points. There we go. Domestic policy, foreign policy for section 1, housing, healthcare, education for section 2, and taxes, employment, and GDP for section 3. And let's create our bulleted list. In other words, let's create the actual outline the way you would have it in your document. First, the introduction. Elections are important. We know that. 2 is section 1 is going to be the first section of the body of the essay. Section 1, political consequences. And what are the subsections? Well, A is domestic policy, B is foreign policy. There's our section 1. Next, section 2, social consequences, housing, healthcare, and education. Next, section 3, economic consequences, taxes, employment, GDP. And finally, the conclusion. And that's it. And there you have it. And you have a complete outline. One aspect that I teach my students to do is to figure out how many words should go into each of the sections, into each of the paragraphs, however you decide to think about it. Now, let's say that we need to write about, let's say, 1,000 words. So 100 words will go into the first paragraph, which is the introduction, and 100 words for the conclusion. This makes sense, right? Now, we'll have 200 words for section 1. Why? Because we have 2 subsections there. So it's 100 words per subsection, 100 words about domestic policy and 100 words about foreign policy. There we go. We're going to have 300 words for section 2 because we have 3 subsections there. So 100 words for each. And this works out perfectly fine. And we're going to have another 300 words for section 3. And if you do the math, that's 1,000 words. Now, if you have to write 5,000 words, just distribute your word count accordingly. Do maybe 250 words for the introduction, 250 for the conclusion, and the remaining would be like 4,500 words. It would be, you would have roughly 1,500 words per section if you need to write that many words. But this is the way you would approach it. You have your sections, you have your main sections, you have your subsections, and you have the word count for every section and every paragraph. Now you have it completely mapped out. You have your essay completely mapped out, and now you know exactly how to approach writing it.